Hey guys, what's going on? Today I wanted to talk a little bit about the two covenants that weren't, or I guess not really, being covered by PvP guides and other warrior streamers, apart from Bajira, obviously, with the Night Fae coverage, right? He covers that in depth when he plays it, and obviously it looks really, really fun. So I wanted to talk a bit about it because I was Night Fae on my alt warrior for a little bit of time. And I have been interested in thinking about what they could do with Necrolord to actually make it viable, at least in PvP, and generally how they're going to balance conduits in the future. Before I start with that, really big thanks to all the support with the subscriptions on YouTube. It's been growing really, really steadily. We were getting more subscriptions every day. The videos seem to be received really, really well. So I'm super happy about that. Even getting follows and even sometimes subscriptions when I'm not streaming, which is super cool. So before that, well, there's one right now. So before I get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit and sorry, I wanted to shout out one subscription that I missed. I wasn't streaming, so Al Dope, thank you for the Prime subscription today. All that support means a lot to me, and if I stream and I don't, sorry, if my stream doesn't ever line up with your schedule, I've always got the VODs for free, completely for everyone. So go check those out if you can. So let's jump into the main thing about the video. Night Fae. Let's talk about Night Fae first, because I feel like the Necrolord stuff is a lot more speculation. The Night Fae we can talk about just on the base of it. So it gets a spell called Ancient Aftershock, which essentially slams down and knocks down targets, and then knocks them down consistently every 30 seconds there, right? It gives you rage based on the enemies inside that area. So if you have any way to lock someone down in that Ancient Aftershock, you'll generate a lot of rage, which is more of a PvE function in a way. Um, and the knockdown is pretty good in terms of one, it doesn't DL with your stun, so you have like another kind of burst ability to kill healers. I feel like this is really, really effective at killing healers, in my opinion, or starting your go against a double DPS like a cleave or something. And the knockdown is something that people kind of underestimate. Like it's really easy to avoid, but at the same time, if you're playing something like TSG or another type of lockdown comp where they're kind of stuck in the same spot for a while, it is super hard to avoid. At least getting ticked down once or twice. So it's definitely underrated. And I think the other really good thing is it lines up with your second burst window. So if you are playing like Warbreaker and Dreadnought, so you don't have anger management, which drops the cooldown of your Warbreaker, you'll have Warbreaker up every 1.5 minutes, and you'll have Ancient Aftershock up every 1.5 minutes. So you have two Warbreakers every 1.5 minute, right? So with Spear and Condemn, obviously Condemn's not that important in this analysis, but with Spear you have it up every minute. So a lot of the times you'll be throwing it down without a Warbreaker. Obviously there's ways you can line that up, but more so for complete efficiency, you do get your Covenant ability every second time you Warbreaker, which is a nice bonus, right? The crits definitely are underestimated by a lot of teams, and a lot of people don't really expect this to come out until it's out. So sometimes, you'll be fighting somebody who'll be 20k HP, and it's very rare for warriors to kill something from like 40% or 50% to zero instantly, right? Whereas the ancient aftershock into an execute is definitely underrated. And I think on one of the earlier 2v2 clips Bajira posted, there's a clip of me getting not really expecting it and getting like one shot at the end after we kind of beat their team, and I was getting a bit cocky and leaping into the team and then get ancient aftershock to the face, and I died. So, you know, definitely something that teams won't expect. And then Soul Shape, this is also something that I think is really good. The little leap is nice. It gives you some movement speed. It gives you some kiting ability, but also chasing ability. So being able to soul shape someone's soul shape. So if you're chasing down an Aflock, or a Boomkin or something that also has a soul shape that would be Night Fae, you can kind of keep on top of them and jump out of the soul shape when they jump out of the soul shape. You don't have to burn all your mobility chasing down a target. So definitely something that's quite nice. But that's, I think, the issue with Night Fae. Like none of them feel that insane. They're just like nice abilities. That if Spear and Condemn was a little bit worse, I mean even like 15, 20% worse, I think Night Fae would be a big contender for being one of the best covenants for Warrior. But considering how strong Spear is and how good Condemn is, right, it's really hard to make the argument for Ancient Aftershock. I think it's something that, Blizzard's going to have to think about how they balance the covenants across the entire expansion and whether they'll actually delve into kind of, maybe buffing some of these underperforming covenants in PvP so that, you have a fair option in everything, right? Obviously, Ancient Aftershock is really good in Mythic Plus too, and just general world PvP, BGs, all this stuff. I think for RBGs it would be really nice to have too. Just that knockdown and that huge burst damage on multiple targets is super super strong. So in regards to the Soulbinds, they give you like a whole bunch of health, and I think this is the first one, Naya, and this gives you mastery and health. The big thing is the mastery on this. So you get 12 stacks of mastery straight away, which is roughly 450 mastery, which is roughly 14, 15% mastery, I think, maybe a bit less. And I think you get about 12% extra maximum health, and this kind of procs throughout the fight too. So realistically, you could throw your Ancient Aftershock down and have like 16, 17% more mastery, which obviously buffs all your damage, and it doesn't suffer from the same issue that the Pelagos Kyrian tree does, where all the mastery benefits halved in Arena. And the duration's quite long too, right? It's 30 seconds, which yeah, that's quite a long time, and the stacks also overlap. So you can have this be up on you. You can have pretty high uptime on this, in my opinion. This is kind of nice too. You get some health regen, which could help when your healer's getting CC'd. But I think generally here, the main interesting part is the final aspects, right? So let's look at the first one, herbs. Um, this is more for healers, so I don't think we'd ever be looking into this. This one puts a poison on your target when you interrupt them, which makes them take, I think, a pretty decent amount of damage plus an extra amount of damage if they're interrupted again. So, if you're kicking something like a Shadow Priest, this could really proc a lot. And considering that this gives you your second potency, I imagine a lot of people will end up taking Naya's tools. Burrs is also super interesting too. So this gives a movement reduction of 20% and inflicts a bit of damage, which could be nice if you can't get a slow onto something that's like a rogue that's kiting you, right? But overall, I feel like these talent trees, the bottom of these really lack a bit of the oomph that you need. I don't know. I feel like Naya is really good just because of the Grove Invigoration, but we'll look at the other ones too. Dreamweaver, obviously, this gives you the really obnoxious pod, but as a warrior, most of your teams don't have they don't have enough peels and setup to keep this pod alive. So I don't really think this is something you really want to delve into. Um, so what do you get here? You get an extra versatility when there's two allies in 8 yards, which this might happen a fair bit because if you're playing a cleave or something. Um, this is really annoying, and I think this is actually pretty good, the soothing voice thing. So when you stun something, you stormbolt a rogue or something, and you're catching up to them, having this 90% slow gives you even more time to catch up to them, which is, I think, really, really nice. And then this part is, I guess this is all right as well, but you probably want the double potency, obviously. So getting into the final tree, here, I don't think any of these are too interesting. You get 12% extra haste when you stand on your Ancient Aftershock. Is this really worth it? Probably not, because the target you're chasing is probably going to leave your Ancient Aftershock pretty quickly or leave the vicinity of it. Um, so, yeah, I don't know. Probably not the best tree for warriors in particular. And then Corrin. Corrin is interesting, right? So this gives you extra damage when your targets are above 75% health, and healing to targets below 35% health, which isn't too relevant. And you get some movement speed as well. So you'll have 15% base movement speed when you're hitting something that has 75% HP or more. I think this is actually going to be pretty good. Maybe in the future when it becomes a bit more min-maxy and stuff like the spear doesn't matter too much, and maybe the game slows down a lot because having that extra 10% of movement speed means that your swaps as a Night Fae could be really, really strong. Because one, you can keep up with a target who's trying to react with Soul Shape and the Wild Hunt tactics, but you're also going to be doing extra damage to them to get them below that 75% health. And then obviously, maybe you throw the Ancient Aftershock at 80% HP to get them sort of close to execute range with a big burst. Um, this Wild Hunt's charge and the Horn of the Hunt, I haven't seen these in game yet. Obviously, this one does seem interesting. Having a stun for 5 seconds seems pretty strong, but you have to be out of combat, which could be really, really difficult for a lot of people to actually get as a warrior, usually in the middle of the fight. So I don't think this is as good as it sounds. It could be really good for other classes, though. And then we look at the bottom. When in front of your target, this is sort of like a base versatility effect. Um, so, I mean, this is not that big a deal. I think this one is alright as well, like against a rogue or something. If you can get them out of stealth, this would be pretty powerful. And then hold the line could be interesting as well if you have to sit stuns. But even then, there's not many stuns that you sit that would be 5 seconds. But maybe against RMP, if you're standing completely still, if they do open you, you're going to have an extra barrier of defense. So ultimately, the soulbinds, I don't think are too interesting here. I think they're lacking a lot of the toolkit when we compare it to something like Kyrian, who has let go of the past, file of patience. Like while these aren't too big a deal, you do get the spear and combat meditation, which is really really good. And I feel like the spear and the file are just insane. And even on stuff like, let's go to Necrolord, right? Like not Necrolord, Venthir. You have Thrill Seeker, which is really nice. You have Familiar Predicaments, which reduces all your roots. And you have in General Draven the standing still thing as well, right? And this persists for 6 seconds, whereas the other one doesn't persist. And you get the Service and Stone where you take less damage while under 40%. So overall, I think, in my opinion, I don't see many people opting for a lot of the Night Fae options. I think Ancient Aftershock is a really cool spell. It might need some tweaking to be more relevant in PvP. Maybe if the knockdowns increase to like 2.5 seconds and maybe the continuous knockdown is lessened so it's not obnoxious. But I just can't really see it being BIS for a while. And I think what they'll have to do to make it BIS is maybe improve some of the bottom things here. And, upgrade or make Ancient Aftershock have a bit more utility to kind of keep up with Spear and Condemn. So that's Night Fae there. In my opinion, should you play it? If you enjoy the lore, you enjoy what Night Fae is about, and that's like an important factor for you. And if you enjoy throwing down the big ancient aftershocks and soul shaping, it's a cool different type of playstyle. Um, I think apart from Bajira, there's not many super high rated warriors that are playing Night Fae. So you can have something different. And to be honest, I don't think it's that much worse than Kyrian. Like I think it would be about 10 or 15% worse overall. Um, Even that is probably a bit of an exaggeration. I think you can still make Night Fae work. I think it's really good in Cleaves too. So let's talk about like the problem child, right? I feel like Night Fae is pretty good. It's not that bad. It's like Kieran and Venthir are just so far ahead of everyone that the other two look really really bad in comparison. Whereas I feel like Night Fae is 10% close. Like it's not that. It's like marginally worse than Kieran and Venthir. You're just taking a loss of performance for no real reason. Necrolord is considerably worse. Necrolord gives you a banner which grants you 20% HP and 10% crit chance um, for you and two allies within 15 yards. The issue is the 3-minute cooldown, right? That's a really, really long cooldown for a spell like this. The 20% HP is nice, but if we compare this to similar things, right? because that's a good way to think about covenants. Like, let's compare this to similar abilities and how much they're worth. Rally gives you rally with a talented rally, like with a PvP talent, gives you about 45% HP if you have the conduit on, right? Which is double the Conqueror's banner, and it has a 1 minute cooldown, right? So you get three of them for the same ability, which I think alone is worth more than the Conqueror's banner. Like if they literally made PvP talented rally a covenant ability, it would be close to being better than Conqueror's banner. Um, and the crit chance, 10% crit chance isn't bad, but I almost think to make it viable, it would need 10% 10% of all secondary stats, to be honest, um, versus mastery, crit, haste. It needs to be a huge buff to your team. It's a 3 minute cooldown. You only get to put down one a game. If you compare it to a lot of other Covenant abilities in Warrior and even other classes, right? Think about how powerful Convoke is, and that's on a 2 minute cooldown. Uh, Instead, if you're a Necrolord, you get to throw down a banner that gives you some crit and 20% HP, and you have to be 15 yards within the banner. So the second thing you could add is if you could carry this banner around, or if it was just a permanent aura in arena for those 20 seconds, just like a buff, like a shout, that would sort of balance it out and make it viable and worth doing. But at the moment, Necrolord is not the play. Looking at Fleshcraft, I mean, the shield's not bad. I think this would equate to about 10k HP or 8k HP or whatever. Once you get the whole fleshcraft off, but a lot of the times in arena you just want to run in there and start the fight. You don't want to just sit behind a pillar channeling this ability. I mean, there might be instances where this is better than normal, but still 8k shield for your second ability versus a file that can clear all dots and like bleeds, curses, and gives you 20% of your HP that you permanently keep as a heal. Um, is clearly better, right? You can use that on use. You don't have to channel anything. You just have it. So not the best thing to run, in my opinion. It's just not a good trade. I think earlier in beta, people were thinking about this potentially being something good for TSG or cleaves and stuff, so you can buff your entire team. But again, the buff just isn't big enough where you're willing to give up the extra damage that you get from the other abilities. So let's think and look at the soulbinds, right? So we have three soulbinds: Hairmere, Bonesmith. I'll just call it Bonesmith, Emily, and Plague Deviser Marileth, right? So let's look at the first one. Volatile Solvent, Fleshcraft, this is pretty irrelevant. This is the only thing I think that's interesting here. It gives you, like, this might be useful, 10% extra damage on a target for 10 seconds, but it's at the start, so usually you have to ramp up some rage and set up your go, so I don't know. Not that good. This one, you get some speed, and this one is pretty good. You get a shield for 15% of your HP every 30 seconds, and it's on a 10-second. It lasts for 10 seconds, so this is actually quite a nice save, especially considering your HP. It's essentially a 7k Battle Master that just procs for you once you drop past 50% HP. This is irrelevant, and the final ability, Channeling Fleshcraft, you're immune to crowd control, and you regenerate health. And then once you finish the full channel, you gain 4 seconds of crowd control immunity and you regen more health. You're not really going to want to be sitting there in a fight channeling this. It could be good against RMP, but like apart from that, there's not many instances where it's super important for you to be channeling instead of doing damage. One, you're going to lose track of your target, and two, it's going to be very hard for you to like just stand there and do this instead of, like, it's probably just better for you to do damage. So super limited uses for ultimate form, but we might see that differently in arena. Emily, the Conqueror's Banner gives you a primary stat, so it gives essentially 5% of your primary stat, and if you have your two targets in an arena next to you, you get another 4%. Right, so you get 9% strength, which is pretty good, which sort of slowly itches Conqueror's Banner a bit higher, but 9% strength is like 80 strength or something. no, more like 110 strength, which is still less than an on-use trinket on a 1 minute cooldown, right? So even if you add all these different things, it doesn't make Conqueror's Banner higher value than any of them, right? Fleshcraft, I mean, this is kind of good, I guess, so you can keep moving and cast it as you move to another target, but still not that interesting. Um, Movement and speed increased by 30% for every. So you get like 9% movement speed if you're in threes and you're on top of all targets, which is a nice quality of life. This literally won't proc unless you win the arena, so it just makes you win more. So not a good ability. And this just seems to be really clunky. Like maybe if you have no FDRs in your comp, and you want to like it's a nice save, but a lot of the times warriors won't be the main kill target. And if this procs, it just doesn't seem to be that good. I think it would be a nice save, but you're kind of playing to lose with this setup. Looking at the last one, you get. I don't really understand for each enchantment on your armor. Um, there must be something linked to this. Uh, I imagine you get 3% primary stat then. Upon death, your armor anchors your soul, so you get to fight for 10 more seconds when you die, but you do 50% less damage and healing, and you can't be healed. This isn't that good. Like, if you die, there's not many games where you would win if you had, like, the ability to do, like, a 2k Mortal Strike, right? I think this is just a bit clunky and probably easily countered. If we look at the other sections, this just seems like it's some extra damage, which is nice. There's not many trees where the second line gives you extra damage or something, so it's nice to have. Um, I don't know if this works in arena. Amount of movement speed is increased by 5%. And these are sort of interesting. You get 18% crit chance if you land 10 critical strikes. I mean, if I don't know how often this would proc if you have like like higher secondary stats. Maybe this procs a lot, and especially if you got deep wound crits and blade storms, having the extra 18% crit is pretty nice, right? And it lasts for 10 seconds, and it procs once per minute. So I think this is a pretty good ability. Um, this just is irrelevant, and this, I mean, if you're killing a target that's under 35%, you're probably gonna have a slow in your arena, and 5 seconds is not that long. Like someone can run, but you kind of yeah you'll be walking fast for 5 seconds, but you should be charging or leaping anyway. So let's talk a little bit more about this, right? What do these things need to be viable? I think firstly they need better conduit soulbind trees. This is the only soulbind tree that could look remotely viable. The rest of them seem to be sort of gimmicky and silly when you compare them to other conduits. Like every covenant has a couple bad soulbinds and soulbind abilities, but at the end of the day, the actual ability carries it, right? And when we look at Banner, it's just not built for PvP. And I don't know if in their game design they consider the fact that like they built these covenants to be played in PvP, which is a possibility, right? They might just think that Necrolord is made for PvE and PvE alone. But even then, with a lot of these fights that people are progressing on, it doesn't seem to be worth it because it's only two allies within 15 yards of you. Um, it doesn't really compute to me when you compare something like Conqueror's Banner with a whole bunch of other classes. Like let's look at Hunter for instance, right? We look at Hunter, Kyrian Hunter, right? Resonating arrow, you can literally shoot something outside of your line of sight, and you have high crit chance, and it's on a 1 minute cooldown. Whereas Banner gives you what 10% crit chance and barely anything, right? 10% crit chance and some maximum health, and you're going to be using this on your go, so you don't really want 20% maximum health. I don't know how that can help you really. So I think this needs to be reworked in arena to have a lower cooldown and increase more secondaries for it to be viable. Generally, I just don't think Necrolord will ever work unless they're willing to take some pretty drastic actions to bring it in line with the rest, which is a shame because it would be fun if all of the Covenant abilities for all classes were viable. You'd have so much variety in the arena. For Night Fae, I think Night Fae is almost there. The Naya tree with Grove Invigoration does seem to be pretty viable, and ultimately Ancient Aftershock just needs a bit of a buff in terms of utility. Maybe it knocks down for longer, maybe it does more damage. I mean, I don't really like putting more burst into it because that's just another gimmick that will ultimately get nerfed, but I think, giving Ancient Aftershock a bit lower of a cooldown, even if it was a 1 minute cooldown in line with Spear, it could be a lot better. But at the moment, I think Spear and Condemn just really outclass it. So I guess the final question: should you run either of these? Right? Should you run Necrolord or Night Fae if PvP is not a main objective for you, specifically in Necrolord? Because I think Night Fae is viable. I don't think it's as bad as people think it is. I think it's definitely playable and could be good in a lot of comps. But for Necrolord, if you like the Mogs, if PvP is not the biggest thing for you, then play it. Play what you like to have fun with. But it will become something annoying and a bit of a hindrance if you do want to look to push rating in the future. For Night Fae, I would say test it out first, really get a feel for it. You can always swap between Night Fae and Kyrian, and um, judging from my experiences when I made, like, at the start of the expansion, I made my second warrior Night Fae, and it was fun for a bit, but then not having the spear and the file actually became really, really annoying, especially once you're used to them. So I felt like the spear just was stronger in a lot of ways that you just can't get out of the aftershock. Even just a 1 minute cooldown, if a game lasts for 5 minutes, right? You're getting five spears and you're only getting three ancient aftershocks, right? So it does add up and it does make a considerable difference to how you play. Um, but feel free to pick whatever you want. I really like how the Ardenweald looks, and the Night Fae campaign is really cool. I recommend if you are really into Warrior and you want to try and just experiment to make a second alt for this kind of stuff, it's perfect for it. I wouldn't risk losing all your Covenant and conduits and all this kind of stuff just to play around with it. But yeah, overall, I would just pick Venthir or Kyrian if raiding is something that's important to you and you wanna climb. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. Just talking and explaining a bit of the other sections, other soul binds that a lot of people aren't covering from a PvP perspective. If you enjoyed the video, send it a like, comment, follow the Twitch, subscribe. It's all much appreciated. Hope you guys have an excellent day. Take it easy.